And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to a double shot edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Rutgers and Minnesota. I'm your host, Chad Schwarzkopf. Here with me always is Martha the Mop Lady. A little different situation on this show where we're going to kind of go over two games, two very interesting games, two very different games of IU. One that we will try to speak as briefly as possible as to not reemerge or stir up some bad memories, some bad thoughts. But again, something that needs to be talked about. We need to equally give attention to the bad and good as much as we can, because it's through the bad that we learn and get moving forward. But currently, as it sits, Indiana is sitting at 12-5 in the country, or in on the season. 4-2 in the Big Ten right now, currently tied for third with Purdue in the Big Ten standings. So the battle for third place happens on Tuesday night. Just two really mixed bag games to go about. And I guess let's pull off the Band-Aid, as we like to say, and talk first about this Rutgers game. That game ending with a score of 66-57. For me, that's the game where the saying, "it's the hope that kills you," rings so true, because there was hope throughout this game. IU was close. IU kept it close. And it was another one of those games where you can kind of say despite. There was really kind of four things that went really, really bad for Indiana in that game. And had we had maybe one or two of them go closer to normal, go closer to average, you probably win that game easily, which is great to say in that sense, because obviously it's a down Rutgers team. It's not the greatest Rutgers team. We always struggle playing at Rutgers against that team, but when you have a game where you're shooting overall, you're shooting 39% field goals, 26% from three, an abysmal 4 for 15 from the free throw line, have 18 turnovers. And then in the second half, when you're still within 5, you still have it relatively close a couple times, your senior leader, who's just back and you're all excited for, commits a unconscionable F2 foul. And from there on, it was pretty much done in this game. It's aggravating when you have games like that, because again, like I said, you fix a few of those, one or two of those, and IU scoots by the win, and we just are here talking about, man, that was an ugly one, but thank goodness we won one in the rack. What a tough physical place that is to play, and we overcame it, and we got going, and just a rough one. And going to stop rambling at the beginning of this one. Let's get some opening thoughts. Martha with me here, as always. Martha, your kind of general thoughts on that abysmal game that it was.
Well, you said it when you kind of, I think the hope was this was, we know what our struggles were or have been historically against Rutgers here in the recent years. And you said it in your opening that this Rutgers team isn't the Rutgers team of the last couple of years. This was one that, there's no secret to that playing on the road in the Big Ten is tough, right? That everybody knows that, right? It takes kind of a different mindset, a different approach on the road. And when we saw how we played it at Nebraska with 19 turnovers and then against Ohio State at home, they grabbed 22 offensive rebounds. So there's little things that you need to do on the road. I call them little things. They're big things, but there's things that you need to do on the road you can't necessarily get away with at home, right? Especially in this conference, and that's giving up offensive rebounds. That's turning the ball over close to 20 times. That's having your 24-year-old senior leader make a boneheaded play like that. There's just things you can't do on the road, especially in games that are so grabbable like that one, right? That's one that when you look at the calendar, because Big Ten road games, I mean, look at Purdue. I mean, it's the opportunities are few and far between that you can grab a road win. So to handicap yourself with just those three things, right? And there's plenty more, you give yourself no chance. And that's the disappointing part is, it's very, very frustrating. And I think you see it a lot when you come home and play well, that you justify road losses because, it's just the Big Ten, right? Look what we did at home. Everybody's losing on the road. Well, there's some things you can control, like control the controllables, right? It's that's the frustrating part. And you see some folks point to our youth, and we're not young. I mean, we've got our backcourt's got a combined 10 years experience of playing ball. And it's just kind of at times, especially on the road, a real lack of identity for this team. And that's the frustrating part is you've got a team that really needs to buckle down here in conference play. And, obviously we'll get to the Minnesota game and you like the response, but this team's got to take advantage of every opportunity if they want to put themselves in a position to play, postseason basketball. So, yeah, it was just a very disappointing performance. I like the way they started, obviously gave them a chance in the first half, but then everything just kind of went downhill. And as this team's kind of shown in the past, when that happens on the road and they get punched, they don't always have that punch back. So that was a frustrating part. And just obviously the stuff going on with X and, just no real identity. It was frustrating. And, but yeah, one that obviously you have to flush pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we get from Coach Woodson in this game the very first post comments of getting over the hump. So check that off your bingo card for the season. We are officially in hump conversations. But having said that, I think the coaching staff did a good job between these two games to kind of get IU refocused. And when you have games like this, when you have struggles on the road, it's great to not be on the road right afterwards, to be able to get home and play a game against a Minnesota team that's kind of middle-ish to low of the pack of the Big Ten and be there at home to get things done is just a nice thing to have. It's a great chance to lick your wounds, safe to say, and get things going the way they should be. And in that game, IU will move on from Rutgers now and on to that Minnesota game. That game finished with a score of 74-62. Again, like you said, a great response game. Got off to a great start in that. They hung on throughout the game pretty much to the lead that they took off with. Moved the ball well in this game on offense. I thought the offense was moving well. Less post feeds, just direct offense, only looking at post feeds, and a lot more drives and everything. Trey was just very active in this game, I thought, as well. Defense had a great, making everything difficult for Minnesota from the point of attack. The first kind of real game that we've seen nearly almost a complete 40 minutes by IU. There were obviously a few dips here and there where Minnesota tried to claw back and everything, and IU went through little droughts, but that's the ups and downs of a standard basketball game. But great to see IU respond and come out with intensity and everything in this game. Your general thoughts of the Minnesota game?
Yeah, I thought we came out and set the tone early, right? It was nice to see just some threes get knocked down early. Obviously, I don't think Minnesota presents that's the thing about Rutgers, right? They're always going to play you hard defensively. And but that's no secret. I don't think Minnesota necessarily brought that. So it was an opportunity for, I think, Indiana to set the tone early. And I'm sure that was the message from the staff. And I thought Indiana came out and did a nice job of getting the crowd into it early. They came out and were the enforcers. McKenzie really set the tone. And I think, I think even Coach said it after the game, being aggressive from the start. And it never really felt like, while there were certainly some lulls in play and offensive lulls throughout the game, it never really felt like Minnesota was necessarily within reach of getting back into the ball game. It felt like Indiana was in kind of complete control, which was nice to see. Especially as a response. I think, it's kind of you call it somewhat of a crossroads just because of everything, all the storylines that happened the other night at Rutgers, right? Especially with X and just, kind of being punched in the face like we were. So I was really interested to see how we came out. I wasn't feeling good going into the game. I was like, man, this has one that's just going to be, kind of a gut wrencher the entire way through. But it was really nice to see our response and some of the guys that came out and that didn't necessarily produce the other night against Rutgers came out. And, McKenzie continues to make strides. I know we'll get into him too, but, it seems like when he gets into the game offensively early, we really are at our best. So it was nice to see that and just really nice to see the response. Still a lot of work to be done, obviously, but it's a Big Ten win and that matters.
And it is that we will transition to Mackenzie first. Then I think that's great to talk about. He continues to be on the up and up for this IU team, and he does get going early. And I think the coaching staff recognizes that when he can see a basket or a play go to him early in the game. I think looking back at this one, Trey had the first basket for IU, but right after that was and that was a 3 by Trey. So that was obviously great to see. But then the following basket was a 3 from Mackenzie. So great to see them run stuff for them and get a shot for him to get him in rhythm. He finishes with 19 points, 2 for 4 from 3, just looking much more comfortable with the ball, more aggressive in his drives. It was even mentioned by Ware in the post-game conference about Mackenzie getting downhill a lot more and be more confident with his drives. And he says in practice, he pushes him to do that and in games as well. And that's kind of the thing that's been lacking and thing that we've been talking in these past games when X has been out is the lack of someone that's going to be that kind of dribble drive threat. And it was good to see him feel more confident in his shot overall. And then as well, just less of a concern on the defensive end on his realm. Doesn't look lost anymore. It seems like it's clicking and being more natural. And the team overall, the defense is less ball watching and more staying active and less over helping and everything. But just like the way Mackenzie is continuing to trend up for IU, it allows for games like this where X, which we'll get into, sat to start, and we didn't need that offense from X when Mackenzie is firing like this, and the guards can kind of play around the game that he does. Your general thoughts then to expand on Mackenzie.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the box score, 34 minutes for Mackenzie, and he's been a guy at times that struggled to get 13, 14 minutes. So that's tremendous right there. Led the team in minutes played, led the team in points, led the team in tied for 3-pointers made with a couple, 5 for 7 from the free throw line. So you point out player of the game, and I think it's Mackenzie. And there's been a lot of, I don't want to call it frustration, but when you come in as a guy that was as highly touted as him, and it's taken a while, right? It's taken a while for him to adjust to the college game a little bit, and specifically defensively, right? And we always knew he kind of had these offensive weapons. So to see it click a little bit, and it seems like it's clicking more than it's not lately, right? There's still going to be these bumps. He's still a freshman. But to see him kind of start to get it, it's nice to see, especially when, we're struggling offensively like we've been. And I listened to the coach after the game just talk about Mackenzie a little bit and how, he tried to get him going early and ran some sets for him early. And then when the double teams came for some of the post guys, how he was open on the backside and took advantage of that. It's just nice to see. It just seems like he was a real integral part of the game plan, and to see him kind of follow through with production, I think is encouraging. And obviously we're going to need it moving forward. So again, just after what happened against Rutgers, it's nice to see that. And it's nice to see a guy like Mackenzie be the contributor. So hopefully that bodes well for when you look at the schedule, what's right around the corner, because we're going to need some offensive production here moving forward.
Well, I think a lot of what we're seeing from him and just the team overall is equally, they're starting to click. Everyone's starting to find their roles in and amongst each other and how to play off each other, because they're new faces. There's so many new faces on this team and everything. And this is a game where you just kind of saw that rhythm amongst each other. You saw everyone figuring things out. We were able to kind of loved moments where we had Ware playing outside and Malik underneath, just everyone playing more of their role. And the next person obviously to talk about as far as just playing their role and playing a great game, I think, is Trey Galloway. And I would almost argue that this might be his best game of the season. And it's weird to say that, obviously, because he had a fantastic game in the Kansas game. And when you look at it, he's not the points leader. And by no means does someone have to have one of their best games and be the leading scorer of that game, but just do everything else within the game and setting everyone else up. And I think that's evident if you just look all the way across his stat line. 10 points in the game, 4 for 5 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3. So it's great to see that going down. Obviously, 0 for 2 from the free throw line is not great, and we'll talk about that when we get to stats. But got 7 assists. That's the really great one to see, and 4 steals. So just really what you would hope to see from a Trey Galloway type of game when you just look at those stats, because you want a guy that's going to be able to drive and try to look for his own shot. And when that doesn't come, is able to dish and find the big guys, break things down and move the ball well. Those 7 assists is what that says. And then you want that guy that's a pester on defense, a guy that's going to challenge their guards and make it difficult for them to get the ball going, get it rolling. And there are those 4 steals there. 25 minutes for him too. So a great kind of minutes distribution for him too, as far as him being able to go full throttle when he's in and use a good amount of minutes for him, but still hold him back and get him some rest. Your thoughts on Trey's game?
Yeah, you said it well, right? And when you ended there with the minute distribution, 25 minutes, that's not much for him. But I think at times when you think about it, it's almost when he's at his best, when he goes in there and he can maximize the time he's given. We saw it, he was coming off the bench last year, right? That spark plug off the bench, and that was more kind of his minute distribution. He's been asked to do a lot more this year, maybe a little bit too much, I think it can be argued. And when he's got that type of minute production, and then you look at his stat line, you mentioned he led the team in assists, especially with X being out, and Gabe's back in. That's been obviously an adjustment with X being back for a couple of games. Then what's happened and his punishment against Minnesota. So that distribution has to come from somewhere. So just to see him go out and play with what looked like a little more confidence, I think that's a little bit easier for him to do in Assembly Hall. But it's been a struggle for him this year. So it's always good to see, 2 guys, we mentioned McKenzie and now Trey, that really kind of had a bounce back game after really struggling the other night. And hopefully that just built some confidence in these 2 guys with Purdue and Wisconsin right around the corner that they can take into those games. And my hope is we can still get X back into, form where these guys are not asked to be doing too much. He can take some of the load, but it's just nice to see Trey have a game, albeit free throws are still a little bit of a struggle for him, which I still scratch my head at. Grew up in a gym, and, my 4th grade team could go out and shoot at the percentage we shoot. I'm convinced of that, but it's just, I don't understand those struggles, but, I don't think they do either, which is why it's, coaches even said it's between the ears. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent about free throws now, but it's just nice to see him bounce back a little bit. We need a confident Trey. He's, coaches asked him to be a leader on the floor, leader in the locker room, a bunch of different things, a producer on the floor. So it's nice to see him have a productive game, and hopefully that carries over into next week.
And to me, a lot of that is mental space for Trey. I think he's more relaxed in this game. I think he feels like he doesn't have to shoulder stuff as much, whether conscious or not. To him, having X back obviously is a calming factor. Granted, again, he didn't do much in this game, but just knowing that he's there. And then I think also equally a calming factor for him is CJ coming on recently. Again, in this game, not doing much, but just knowing that he can go in there and supply minutes and take some of that pressure off of him. And then Cups being a better ball handler and distributor for the team. I think it just all equals a more relaxed Trey, who can then play his game, play his aggressive, find his points, do the things that he needs to do, and not feel like he has to hold back on defense because he needs to stay in the game because we're short on guards that can contribute, or that he has to be the offensive producer for IU. So great to see that moving over. And transitioning obviously to X and everything. Obviously, he didn't start, taken away from the starting lineup in this game. Really am hoping this is kind of that wake up slump that we have seen in the past from X. This kind of out of the starting lineup punishment for the crazy Rutgers moment. And hopefully he comes out of those like a bat out of fire, on fire, and just hopefully we see him do a lot better things. But this game he was held to only 2 points, and those 2 points were made at the free throw line. And if you look at the stat sheet as well, again, in plus and minus, he was the highest at minus 13, the 17 minutes that he was in. So really struggled in this game, really in his head mentally, I think, right now. And hopefully he can find that calming factor. Hopefully he can find what he needs. Because again, X firing up at the end of the season, like we have in the past, is what this team's going to need to get to that next level and get those few road wins that we desperately need for the resume in the Big Ten Conference. Your kind of general thoughts on where X sits now, and hopefully where we can get him moving forward.
Yeah, it's it's disappointing. It's to go back to Rutgers and just a guy that's 24 years old that's had some storylines coming into each season, right? I think when we go back as far as him transferring in from Pitt, and it's similar to Khalil transferring in this year. He came with some perceived baggage, right? I think if you educated yourself at all on his time at Pitt or read any of the articles written, him and Jeff Capel, the coach at Pitt, they just they were oil and water, didn't get along. X had a lot of technicals during his time there, so it was going to be one of those things where you knew he was going to play with emotion. How is that going to go? And I think the coaching staff has done a tremendous job with him for the time he's been here, really trying to help him work through his emotions on the court. Obviously, he's made some decisions off the court that have put him in tough spots and whatnot. But he's always been somewhat able. He's always played with emotion, right? You never want him not to play with emotion. That's just asking him to be somebody he's not. But you always want him to try to channel it the correct way. And I think he's done, for his time here, he's done a pretty solid job of that up until Rutgers. And it's tough, right? I mean, a guy that comes back for an additional season. He's 24 years old. You think from a maturity standpoint, he's in a spot where he knows good and bad decision making, and let's be honest, he does. And for him to make that decision the other night at Rutgers, it's putting yourself ahead of your team. It's putting your team in jeopardy on the road when you need these games. It was just extremely disappointing, and I'm certain he knows all these things. And then obviously his response was again, for an emotional player, I'm sure, he's not naive to what's been said about him, to what, things that are being said on social media, to, I'm sure there's been conversation with the staff, punishment internally. So to see, him struggle with his response, again, I think that's probably in his head a little bit for a guy that plays with emotion. To hear that, to see that, it's frustrating, probably putting a little bit of additional pressure on himself to go out and kind of try to respond well. And when that doesn't happen, you're not in the starting lineup. You're coming in, you struggle right away. It's the emotions begin to take over again. So he's got to be a guy that kind of has to reset. And he's kind of got a final chapter here that he's got the ability to write. And I said it the other day, I think there's going to be times when he's going to have to put us on his back a little bit, or be the offensive guy that carries us. And I hope that he puts himself in a position to be able to do that. I trust that with the help of the coaching staff, he will. But yeah, I'm kind of rooting for him. I'm disappointed in him. Don't get me wrong. I sound like a parent here. I'm disappointed in him because I think he made some boneheaded choices and he put himself in front of the team. But I'm also hopeful that he can kind of write a strong final chapter and close this thing out the way that I think anybody would want him to, and that's with being able to produce and help this team get to some victories. So kind of crossroads for him, but I think we're going to need him down the stretch, and I hope that he can kind of pull it together here in short order.
Yeah, we need that emotion. We need that fire. We need that bulldog that X gives this team, and he does. He flirts with the razor's edge, and we kind of need him to, but we need him to tip that proper way. And I think it's out from other teams too, that they know that he's emotional, and they know he's going to be like that, and they're going to push his buttons in games. They're going to try to see if they can get that reaction out of him and can get him to get emotional and lose control and everything. And that's on the coaching staff to figure out a way to motivate him properly and what they need to do. And they've been with him enough years now that they hopefully have that figured out and know what to do in this situation to get him to the right headspace. And now even maybe with Coach Chaney there, and maybe he knows a way that he can get through to him. Obviously we aren't privy to that kind of communication and things that happen. So I hope that they can find that, because we're going to look back at this time and we're going to point to the Rutgers game and that F2. And hopefully we look at look at it as the turning point and not as the collapse. So I choose to try to stay positive to that and hopeful. Again, you've got evidence both ways. It's a tough argument to try to be right, because you can be right on both sides of that coin in that argument. And I just hope that it comes up the positive way for IU. Looking at our other guard, Cups obviously starting in his stead. Didn't really, when you kind of look at his overall box score, nothing really stands out, obviously, all that great. Scoring no points in this game. Took 5 shots, took 1 3, missed his 1 free throw, which is shocking from him. A guy that is very active in the gym and known shooter and everything, because obviously he gets up enough free throws. 4 rebounds, which is kind of good to see as a guard to be aggressive. Overall, again, we'll get to it, but I think the rebounding was a lot better in this game. 1 assist, 1 turnover. So it's weird for me to see in 30 minutes of play for him. It's weird to see that box score, because I think it definitely does tell a false game to a degree, because I think he was very active and very good at bringing the ball up and finding things and initiating the offense. I just question his shot selection for himself and a few of those things that he's looking for. But what I saw that was a lot better in this game and where he contributed was his defense. That was one of the things leading into this season that had me so excited about this team, was the point of attack defense that IU could give or show at other teams, with Trey, who had been elite on the defensive end in the past on the ball, and X, who was, again, very good on defense. Was very excited for that. And Cups has needed to kind of come along with that. And I thought he did a really good job, especially against Minnesota's lead guard, point guard, who was very small, very aggressive, very fast, at staying with him, fighting around the screens, fighting through the screens, just making it tough for them. Your thoughts on Cups' game?
I agree 100% with you. I think when you look at his contribution against Minnesota, it was primarily on the defensive end. And we go back to some of the conversations we've had this season, and you made the comment a couple times about his dad's quote about Gabe being kind of an acquired taste. And you really have to watch the entire game to kind of appreciate his contributions. Would we love more from him offensively? 100%, especially when we're begging for some perimeter offense, and what we got from McKenzie was great, but, I still convinced he's kind of a 4 playing the role of a 3, and still obviously very skilled and contributed from the perimeter on against Minnesota. But when we look at our point guard and shooting guard offensive production and Trey's up and down season and X, we know what we just talked about X, right? We're begging for somebody to give us some constant offensive production. And I think, I made the comment that I think Gabe is at his best when he's surrounded by scorers, right? He's a point guard. He's a true point guard. He's an old school point guard. He's a pass first, shoot second point guard. He'll take shots and find driving lanes when he can. And he does a decent job of that. He's not doing a great job at finishing or always finding the great shot. I think he's having a little bit of a challenge adjusting, going from playing high school basketball to Big Ten basketball. But he's also a freshman, being asked to play point guard in the Big Ten. I mean, Braden Smith's a good example. And while I think he's a lot more skilled offensively than Gabe, you look at the step he took from his freshman season to now his sophomore season. And I think you'll see Gabe do something similar within his skill set, within the things he does well. I think you'll see him take a big jump next year. But I think he's doing a tremendous job defensively. I would love to see him get, obviously not so many zeros across the box score when it comes to scoring. But I think for all intents and purposes, he's probably doing what coach is asking him to do, and that's go out and play some really strong defense. So I think all in all, just watching him and watching what his contributions are, he's doing a pretty solid job.
Yeah, and again, it comes with a little bit of a disclaimer in the sense that he's a freshman, and we never expected him to even contribute the way he has and play the minutes that he has so far. for IU. And so great to see, again, the experience, the resume build that he's getting for this team. Moving on to the guys under the basket for IU, Malik kind of had a game where he turned it on in the second half, didn't have as many points in the second half, just finished with 16 in this game, had 14 of those 16 in the second half. Continues to just be the solid player. Missed his 1 3-point shot that he took. I would like him to take 2, honestly. I want 2 from him each game. 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, 30 minutes of play for him. Some of those assists, again, getting back to a little bit of the big guy to big guy action going on. I love the way those two play together. We hadn't seen it as much in the assist and them playing off each other in some of the recent games, in Rutgers as well. But liked what he continues to be, just that solid rock when IU was struggling, when Minnesota went to the zone for a little while there in the game. Just a great distributor for this team, and being able to go out and kind of get his own basket, just kind of clear the side, have McKenzie there be the one that enters that pass, and the double team comes, being able to kick out to McKenzie now, who can fire or shot fake and drive. Just finding things melding together so much better, and this team melding around Malik as kind of that pillar, that rock for this team. Your thoughts on Malik's game?
Yeah, just I think obviously when you look at the season, just been a rock for us. Consistently been our best offensive threat, been learning to work through double teams. Again, I think maybe not necessarily the game we thought he might give us at Rutgers, but so a nice bounce back opportunity for him. But yeah, I think when you look at his progression from last year to this year, I think, maybe somewhat underappreciated with some of the struggles we've had on the perimeter that can tend to overshadow kind of what he's been able to do. But he's just been a stud, and I think a guy that when it's all said and done, because when you think about kind of his NBA potential, or what it might not be, just because he's kind of an old school big guy that plays down on a low block, and with his size, it's one of those things where with the way the NBA game is going, he might be around here for 4 years. So when it's all said and done, a guy that has a chance to do some special things in the Indiana uniform. And, there were a lot of concerns. I think everybody understood what his potential was coming into the season, but just to see him kind of crush those concerns with his ability to stay on the court and produce like he is, and learning to play through double teams. He's just really a joy to watch, and shooting at almost a 50% rate. I think he continues to be strong there, and just his ability to draw fouls, 6 rebounds, just another solid performance when we needed one, right? We needed a response. We needed an answer. And he along with McKenzie and Khalil gave us that. So just, nice to see him just have that bounce back game as well from Tuesday.
Yeah. And I think going to our other big guy, just had a great game of just being available for IU. Great to see him step out and hit those 2 threes as well. Someone on Assembly call last night, or the other night when they had their post game, I was listening to it and said it very interestingly. We almost have a center in Malik trapped in a power forward's body, and then a power forward stuck in a center. Anyways, their bodies are almost reversed for the games that they play, because Ware is able to get out like he can and shoot it and has that softer touch and everything. And then Malik is truly that more aggressive guy. And it's very interesting because when I watch his games, he has those kind of like Juwan Morgan games. Juwan Morgan would have these amazing stat boosted games, and you were kind of shocked because it was quiet in the game. You didn't feel like he did what he did, and then are surprised once you finally go back and look at the numbers in this game as well. 17 points, 6 for 11 from the field. He hit those 2 threes, like I said, 2 for 5 from the field, 14 rebounds, which is fantastic to get that double-double and snatch down 14 rebounds in the Big Ten is tough, and he's using his size. He's being more aggressive. Overall, I think I saw the team doing better on the rebounding side. 2 blocks. Just loved as well about in the post press conference him talking about the intensity, just saying how the intensity is ratcheted up, and the team played and practiced with more intensity, and then coming out with intensity. How important it is for them to focus on that, and the players to be aware of that. It is great. I like seeing that. What do you think of Ware's game?
Yeah, a strong performance by Khalil too. I know obviously he got in, there's a little stretch where he had to sit due to foul trouble, but still was able to play 33 minutes. I was surprised that Sparks didn't get more of a run at when he went out. But yeah, I think, when you look at it was more of a typical game that Khalil and Malik have given us. So to see that duo put up 17 and 16, I think is encouraging, especially at home and when we've got Purdue here right around the corner. So yeah, just another solid performance from him. I love the fact that he came out with the energy he did, knocked down, went 2 of 2 from 3. And for a guy that came in with kind of a perceived lack of energy, for him to use that word and talk about playing with energy. And that was clearly the focus, right? Setting the tone early. I think he was a major contributor to that. We know obviously his skill set, right? It's just making sure he comes out and plays with that high energy, that high level of intensity. And he did. And when he does, it's the game we get from him. We're getting used to it. So the 14 rebounds jump out to me. When you look at the next closest person, especially when we've struggled so much rebounding the ball, which has just been odd to me, especially allowing teams to get offensive rebounds at just such an incredible clip. For him to come out and, the next closest guy to him was Malik with 6. So, for him to have 14 rebounds was, I think, just him. It speaks to him playing with that energy level, with him being locked in on both ends. So that's encouraging to see, just that stat line across the board.
Well, and getting into stats, and we'll dive right there into rebounding. I think it looked a lot better. While it was relatively even with IU at 40 rebounds and Minnesota with 42 overall, it was more about how those rebounds were got by IU. They look more active at the rebounds. They look like they're trying to go get the ball a lot more. There's obviously been a lot of practice and focus on that recently for the coaching staff. And instead of how they have been, if you go back and look at other games, they slightly block out the players, and they're just kind of watching and hoping the ball comes towards them. And I saw a real effort by guys in this game, and Ware especially, to just go get it. Don't wait for it to come to you. Go get the ball. And obviously IU, I feel like part of the bad luck that we've had suffered in the past to some of those long rebounds, those bouncing hardly off the rim and going wide to the opponents, unfortunately. But again, overall, I think just the rebounding looked a lot better in this game. The other kind of stat positively that I'll look at in this game is the turnovers to assist ratio, 10 turnovers to 17 assists. That's great. The stark comparison to what we had in the Rutgers game. Just trying to get that up real quick. Our turnover to assist ratio nearly even, 18 to 17 in that game. So 17 assists on both, again, shows why. Again, don't go back to the Rutgers game, Chad. Move on from the Rutgers game. I'm moving on. I'm refocusing. But that was a good number to see. Again, turnovers coming down, assists going up, just the movement of the ball, everything that happened in that game was a lot better for IU. One negative I'll look at is probably the free throw shooting. That has just been abysmal in these past 2 games. We need to improve things. Going 4 for 15 against Rutgers, and then turning around in this game and going 16 for 27 against Minnesota, nearly just under 60% for IU. If we make a few more of those, it's a 20-point game win for IU. If we lock in on that, because we missed a couple front ends of 1-and-1 situations like that. Players missed them that usually don't miss them. What are kind of some stats, whether you want to talk on what I mentioned or other ones that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think obviously we talked a lot about kind of some of the bounce back stats, and when I look at the box score, just still some inconsistencies from the bench. I think Anthony came in and played some strong minutes, but just we've talked a lot about CJ and Caleb and just the inability to consistently take that next step. While they've each had their moments, and when you even take a step back further in the makeup of this roster, it's it's almost it would be very, very interesting to see if the staff had a do-over this past offseason to see how they would build the roster. They put a lot of chips in the basket of I think, X being able to produce at a higher rate, Trey coming off a really strong season last year being that number 2 guy, and then guys like CJ and Caleb taking that sophomore step. And when you look at just those 4 things, I don't know that you can say any one of them have happened. And I think I continue to just kind of look and see, monitor progress with the bench, and CJ played 13 minutes and I went 0 for 3, 0 for 1, 1 for 2. And, we've seen him, can't remember who the opponent was, Ohio State, maybe, where he had a pretty strong game, knocked down a 3, maybe scored 10 points. I can't remember. But, you and I have had the conversation a lot over the last couple of years and about guys that have needed to take that step and not letting the good games be the outlier and these bad performances be the norm. And unfortunately, that's still what it is for these guys. And just getting to a point where as this program tries to find an identity and tries to build for the future, you've got to be able to develop some guys on the perimeter, especially when you're counting on it to be the makeup of your roster. So I just look at their stat line and especially against an opponent like Minnesota where the opportunity's there, and have a little bit of frustration that they're not able to take that step when given the opportunity. I mean, Caleb only had 3 minutes. I get it. But CJ in particular, when there's just that stage on the perimeter that's just begging for somebody to step up consistently, you just want somebody to grab it and take it, and to see him, to still kind of be pretty inconsistent is frustrating. But onward, and hopefully those good games, stop being kind of the outlier and become a little bit more normal. But outside of that, obviously free throws are I don't want to. It's like you talking about Rutgers. I don't want to. You can bang your head. I mean, because it comes down to it. You're gonna, if you continue to shoot at that rate, you're going to end up dropping a close game because you can't knock down your free throws. And maybe we've already seen it, but it's so incredibly frustrating to shoot in the 50% area. It's embarrassing. It's at the college level. I mean, it's just bad. And I think coach makes a point. It probably is part mental, but it's just like, it seems like it's been bad for a while now. And I'm not sure what the answer is there, but it's going to be something that could prove costly if it continues.
Well, and honestly, we may have shooting 27% at Rutgers, missing 11 free throws, leaving 11 points there off the board. That there's an example for you, Martha, where it actually held in. But again, finishing on one final, I think, positive stat in this was IU's defense. IU held Minnesota to under 1 point per possession at 0.912. And that's the kind of momentum you want to see from this team, and some of the better performance you saw in this game moving into such a big game that we have on Tuesday. IU going up against Purdue on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Unfortunately on Peacock, which is just been a mess this year, but whatever. Hopefully this is an outlier and we'll see what we run into next year. Let's complain as much as we can on those social medias, guys, listeners out there. So hopefully they change this next year. Probably won't, but we all can hope. But this is the kind of performance I am hopeful for IU going into such a rivalry game. A game where we got our rhythm back. Guys were doing some things that were a lot better, but it wasn't a game where now we feel like we can go into practices this week and just relax and pull things back. There are things to improve upon. There are things to get better at and continue to make that snowball move down the hill and grow a little bit better going into such a tough game. Your kind of thoughts, again, wrapping up maybe this game and then talking ahead about Purdue on Tuesday.
Well, it's nice to get some momentum. Obviously, Purdue is still Purdue with college basketball's player of the year, I think, being kind of their anchor in the middle. and it's a team we were also able to beat 2 times last year. Woody's always been able to come out with a pretty solid game plan. Now, granted, Trace Jackson Davis, Jalen Hood, Jafino, Race Thompson, they're not walking through the door. So it's a whole new cast that has to be ready to play Purdue, but it's also in Assembly Hall, right? We know what the environment's going to be like. It's a big rivalry game, but it's one we're going to have to be ready defensively. Purdue does a great job running their stuff. When Edey's done a great job of getting his guards involved, and the guards have done a good job of jumping. When the bright lights are on them as freshmen, they didn't always perform. It seems like they've done a little bit better job this season. Dropped a couple games, lost at Nebraska, lost at Northwestern. So they're beatable on the road, but it's going to take a heck of an effort. These guys they beat some good teams this year, so we're gonna have to be ready. I think we're gonna have to feed off the environment. It's one of those games where, just like with Minnesota, we're gonna have to come out and set the tone early, right? Come out and be the enforcer and not take that first punch, because we know what happens sometimes when that takes place. So yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, and quite honestly, it's a game we need. When you look at our resume, we've got to have some of these resume building wins, and it's one we really, really need if we want to keep some postseason hopes alive. So I'm hopeful we come out and play with a lot of energy and play very, very well.
Yep. And Assembly Hall is going to be rocking. It's going to be very lively. It's going to be very loud. It's going to be full throated and everything. And it's one of the big marquee games on the schedule and everything. And unfortunately, if you find yourself in that situation where you can't go to this game, I plead to you to not cash in, obviously, on the resell that you can do, but make someone's year, make someone's life, and go on over to Hoosier Ticket Project and donate those tickets to make someone's just so excited and light up and experience their first time in Assembly Hall and getting to such a marquee game like this. Martha, tell them where they can go to get those tickets donated.
Yeah, we had, I think, 12 first-timers in Assembly Hall on Friday night, which for a Big Ten Friday night game is impressive. But it was had a big take a little to their first game. We had a father-son. It was their first time in Assembly Hall. And so hearing those stories and then getting to see the photos never, ever gets old. I think we all remember our first time stepping into that building. It's a special moment. So to be able to create those moments for others and be a part of that, not only me helping out with the project, but then allowing, I think, our donors to be a part of that and sharing those stories with them. It's a special process, one that I love being a part of. And as you mentioned, and again, appreciate the opportunity to speak about it. If there's games you can't make it to, obviously we're getting to a stretch where I woke up this morning, I think it was 1 degree out here in northern Indiana. I tried taking my dog for a walk, and neither one of us wanted anything to do with that. But we're getting to the point now where it's especially if we have to travel, it's not as easy. The weather's kind of playing a role in that. So if there's ever games you can't get to, we've got a large pool of individuals, of deserving folks that are within an earshot of Assembly Hall that can get to the game. So consider the project, HoosierTicketProject.org /donate is a place where you can make that donation or visit our website to learn more about that. And we certainly appreciate everybody that's made these memories happen. Thank you, Chad.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Big one coming up on Tuesday. Exciting times. IU has the right mindset moving forward. We're not talking about having to have a rebound type of game, what kind of players are going to show up and everything in this game. Guys are in the right mindset. Hopefully X can turn around and turn it on for this game. We need him back to X status for this one. So this could be that fire that ignites him. So excited to see, excited for those that get to be in the hall, and excited for those that are going to lose their voices and wake up the next morning with that game hangover. But man, it feels good when you're in that moment in Assembly Hall, and it's just deafening. So excited to watch this game, see this team continue to move forward. But that for today is going to be it for this episode of Hoosier Morning After. Thanks for being with me. Thank you to Martha for being here with me as always. Thank you to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. You can follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. There I post more information about the show when we're going to go live. You can watch there, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then also listen to the podcast on different streaming networks wherever you get those. We'll be back again the morning after the next game. Hopefully a very cheerful, very excited, very riveted Wednesday morning for us. Join us there. Grab your coffee. Join Jen and all the other fantastic people that we have in the chat. Until then, guys, go out there. Have yourselves 100% of a wonderful Sunday morning. And as always, let's go Hoosiers.